within the stories of Chumash that we come across the idea of putting someone in tfisa, in imprisonment. And one of them is in this week's parsha. But the story in this week's parsha is less obvious than some of the other sources. The two other ones are more obvious, more clear in the text. And they are a story in Parshas Emor, the story of the Megadif, the story of the one that, the blasphemer, the one that spoke inappropriately. He was Makallel, he cursed out God's name. And he was placed in solitary confinement, b'mishmar. It's clear in the Psukim in Parshas Emor. Another fellow, another fellow was in the end of Parshas Shlach, the Mekoshish, our good friend the Mekoshish. We had a shir about him not too long ago. The Mekoshish as well. He was caught desecrating the Shabbos publicly. There are 2 sheets, plenty of sets. And he was also placed in Mishmar, in confinement. Now, what was the purpose of those 2 individuals being placed in Mishmar, in jail, in prison, being held? So we begin with Rashi number 1. Number 1 is a simple Rashi in Chumash, in Parshas Emor. And Rashi says, Vayanicheu, they placed the Makallel, the cursor, they placed him in a cell, in some type of confinement, some type of hold, a prison. Says Rashi Levado, he was placed alone, solitary confinement. V'lo yinichu Mekoshish imay, they did not place the Mekoshish with him. Says Rashi, why would they have? Sheshneim hoyu beperek echad. They were both the same time. They were both the same time, but they were placed in different holdings. Here we go. Now, why taka were they not placed together? So here's an important idea. It says Rashi, "V'yoidim hoyu shamekoshish b'misa." The Mekoshish, the one that was caught, let's say, gathering wood. The story in the end of Shlach, they knew that he deserved the death penalty. Shenemar mechalel mois yumas. It says in Parshas Kisisa, whoever desecrates the Shabbos must die. Avol, however, loy purush lehem be'ezim, said they did not know how to kill him. They didn't know which penalty. There are 4 ways that Bezdin can administer the death penalty: stoning, burning, strangulation, slicing off the head. They didn't know which one. Lekach nemer, that's why it says, in fact, in Parshas Shlach, when Moshe put the Mekoshish in his prison, ki loy purush ma'ya asla, didn't know what to do with him. He knew he should die, but didn't know how. Avol b'Makallel, but by the cursor in Parshas Emor, who Omer, the pasuk says that they put him in jail, lifresh lem bechlal, to hear what they should do. Shaloi hoyu, they did not know im chayv misa im lav bechlal, does he deserve the death penalty or not? According to Rashi, the reason these 2 people were put in jail, it was a temporary measure until it became clear from God what should be done with them. So the jail was not a term for punishment. It was just to hold them until it was clarified what to do with them. Now Rashi in Parshas Shlach, when he speaks about the Mekoshish, he says, when taka did the story happen? The story happened, in fact, before Matan Torah. The story happened in the second Shabbos in the wilderness, which was it's written in Parshas Shlach, but it actually happened before we got the Aseres HaDibros in Yisrael. It was when we first entered the desert and we were given the mitzvah of Shabbos. The first Shabbos we kept. The second one, the Mekoshish desecrated. That's what he says in Parshas Shlach. Which is interesting, because then how did they know that the Mekoshish should die? Rashi here says they knew the Mekoshish should die, because it says in Parshas Kisisa, whoever breaks Shabbos should die. They didn't know which death penalty. But the story happened well before Parshas Kisisa. Parshas Kisisa is what Hashem told Moshe when he was in Har Sinai. The story of the Mekoshish predates that. But somehow the Yidden knew already then that there's a death penalty for Shabbos. I guess when Rashi says that because it says in Kisisa, he's just bringing a raya that it's well known that Shabbos carries a death penalty. And the same way it says in Parshas Kisisa, the Yidden were informed that already way back when they were given Shabbos in Morah, when they left Egypt and they went through the desert, and Rashi seems to explain the reason why is because they had different sentences, or there were different punishments. The one that broke Shabbos for sure should die. The shaila is how. And the Mekalo, the cursor, they Bechal didn't know if he should die or not. So the Sifsei Chachamim explains, you see from here, you can't put two prisoners together if their outcomes may be different. Because imagine if the cursor would have been put together with the Mekoshish, and then the cursor would know that the Mekoshish is going to die. He would think the same thing awaits him, and then he finds out he's actually off the hook. Unnecessary torment. And that's why, since they're under different categories, they cannot be in the same cell. Because, right, if you have two prisoners together and one is for sure going to get the death penalty, what's the other guy supposed to think? And if he's not going to get the death penalty, it's unnecessary torture to have him go through that psychological torment.
They have a slog. They both had a slog.
Yes. Yeah, like regular. Yeah. Anyhow, so this is one idea we find clear in Chumash, the idea of Meiser. But it wasn't jail for the purpose of a punishment of jail. It was a temporary measure just to clarify what should be done with the fellow. Okay, this takes us to number 2. Number 2 is a Rashi in this week's Parsha. There's the story of Eldad and Medad. Eldad and Medad, two wonderful, they were prophets, great people. Last year actually, today, on this week's Parsha, we had a fascinating shir about the identities of Eldad and Medad. Brothers, half-brothers of Moshe, the Shailas from Amram or from Yocheved, as we discussed by Rucha. But Eldad and Medad give a prophecy. And Moshe's son, Gershom, comes running to his father. Moshe was then in the Oyel Moed, he was in the Mishkan. And he had just summoned 70 elders from the Shvatim to join him in his communal service. And the Eibishter emanated from the spirit of Moshe upon them, and they all prophesied. Eldad and Medad remained in their tents in the camps. And they prophesied too. What did they say? They told people, Moshe is going to pass on, Yeshua will bring the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael. You could imagine that kind of shook the populace. Moshe's son comes running and says, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Yeshua was there and he said, Master, my master Moshe, Klo'em. Look at Rashi number 2. What does Klo'em mean? Hatal aleim tzorchet tzibur. Place upon them. Tzorchet tzibur is communal obligations. Vehem kolim me'aleim, and they'll fall away they'll disappear on their own. It'll destroy them. And many understand that to mean that the headache and the heartache of dealing with the community will have them lose their status of prophets. They won't have the peace of mind, the joy, the calmness of spirit in order to receive prophecy, and that way we'll take care of these prophets. Says Rashi, Dover Acher, another pshat. Tneim el Beis HaKela, put them in prison. Lefi shoya'ayim bisnabim, sorry, because they were prophesying, Moshe will die, Yeshua will bring the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael. So Yeshua wanted them imprisoned. And the shaila is, what's Yeshua talking about? Where do we find in Torah that prison is given as a punishment? Where do we find such a thing that Yeshua says, Kloim? The only historical precedence Yeshua could have drawn from is Rashi number 1, the story of the cursor in Parshas Emor, and the story of the Mekoshish in Shlach, which happened, like we mentioned, even before the Torah was given. So it's a year plus before the story in this week's Parsha. So Yeshua is maybe drawing on this, these precedents from earlier that you see sometimes you throw someone in jail, but hang on. There, it was always a temporary measure until we figured out what to do with them. What?
called matzah. It doesn't wait for your...
Right, exactly. Right. It's a difference of jail before the sentence or after the sentence, right? You want to make sure the guy doesn't bail, the guy doesn't run. You have to hold on to them until we figure out what to do with them. So how is Yeshua inferring from those stories to throw Eldad and Meldad in prison?
Assuming there's a punishment. They did something wrong. We don't know what yet.
We never have... So in other words, Yeshua wasn't sure what they did
He
wrong.
did something wrong.
Well,
Stick
well,
him in jail. We'll figure it out.
So the Kohen wants to suggest that Yeshua, fakert, he was saying, just like in the other two precedents, the reason we locked him up was to figure out what to do, so too over here. Which means Yeshua had some type of suffix. He was unsure what to do with Eldad and Meldad. So what taka did they do wrong? They were given a prophecy. L'chor, to the contrary, if a prophet receives prophecy and doesn't reveal it, they're chayiv misa. They get, obviously Bezin can't kill them because we don't know about it, right? But they're chayiv misa in the hands of heaven. They're chayiv misa in the hands of God if they hold back their prophecy. In fact, the Ramban, the Rosh, the Rogad Shavar all learn when it comes to the story of Yosef, the reason why Yosef didn't hold back the dreams. He told them to his brothers. What was he thinking? Vayasifu Eitznaz, they continued to hate him. What was he thinking? And the Rogad Shavar explains, based on those Rishonim and his own ideas, that these dreams to Yosef was a prophecy. He was not allowed to keep them in his stomach. He had to reveal them. He didn't have a choice, although he knew the consequences, the enmity that would be born between him and his brothers. So, what was the suffix of Yeshua? Eldad and Meldad did nothing wrong. So,
but did he know them to be prophets? Did Yeshua knew them to be prophets, or is this the first time that they prophesize in public?
Does that mean the first time anyone prophesies, you throw him in prison?
No, but it says clearly. It says that they were.
That's what we know. That's what God told Moshe to write. Gershom said it. Fine. They were saying prophecy, but how did they know it was real? So the truth is, there's lots of discussion over here. What exactly happened? Why were they giving prophecy in the camp? Why didn't they go to the Mishkan like all the other 70 elders? The Eibishter promised Moshe 70 elders, but there's 12 Shvatim. There's 12 Shvatim, right? If you have 6 from every Shevet, it gives you 72. How do you get 70? So 2 Shvatim had to give only 5. Moshe said, how will I decide between no Shevet's going to listen to me to give only 5? So Moshe summoned 6 from every Shevet, and he made a goyrel, 72 pieces of paper. On 70 it says, you are an elder, 2 of them were blank. So you may assume that Eldad and Meldad were the 2 that reached the blanks. And that's why they went back to their camps, to their tents. The problem is, but then they prophesied. Yeshua says, Hashem said only 70. God said 70. There's already 70 in the Mishkan. They must be false prophets. That's one opinion in the Sifri. No, but then why do you throw them in prison? If they're false prophets, if you know they're false prophet, Bechenek, kill them. What's the idea of throwing them in prison?
Wasn't sure.
Why wasn't he sure? God said 70 and they got the empty papers. They were not chosen. So the truth is, Rashi writes in Masechta Sanhedrin and Daf Yud Zayin, Eldad and Meldad never went to the Mishkan. Everyone knew there's going to be 72 people chosen, and they knew that 2 of them are going to get the cold shoulder. They're going to come to the Mishkan, we're going to do the raffle, only 70 will be chosen. So Rashi in Sanhedrin learns Eldad and Meldad never left their tents. They were worried that out of their humility, they were going to be the 2 people to get the blank, so they never went. The other 70 went. They all got the ticket that said Zoken, you are an elder, and there were 2 left, 2 blanks left. But Eldad and Meldad actually never received them. They never received the blank. It's a big difference, because Rashi writes in this week's parsha, the idea was whoever received the blank is receiving a message that you are unworthy. But they never received it in their hand. That means they never received the message. So therefore, Yeshua maybe was unsure. There happens to be another opinion in Medrash that it could be Eldad and Meldad were actually part of the 70. There were 2 others that were disqualified. But out of their humility, they said, we should be the ones. So they left. Yeshua's problem was that Hashem told Moshe, I will emanate from the Spirit on you among the the elders, they all had to be next to Moshe. Eldad Meidad were in their tents. So Yeshua felt maybe that was a foreign spirit. So there's lots of opinions exactly what happened.
You could not use Moshe and Aaron as the 71 and 72, or 1 and 2 and then 70?
Well, 70 besides them.
No, 70 besides them.
Well, Aaron isn't discussed, but 70 besides
But they're
Moshe.
only- But they're come from, okay.
So one
See, what
opinion
I'm
is...
saying, that they're from their tribe, so they only took 4 more from their tribe.
But 70 besides Moshe, so he
I
can't be
understand,
included.
but
So what do you
Moshe
say?
and Aaron is 72.
No, but
Can't
wait.
be.
Who said Levi? If Ephraim and Menashe both gave 6 people, then Levi didn't. You can't count Levi and Menashe and Ephraim, then you get 13.
From each Shevet?
So either Yosef in general gave 6, and then Levi gave 6, or Levi didn't give. We don't know. Eldad and Meidad, by the way, are from different Shvatim. They're not from the same Shevet. Because you always wonder, Moshe's Geirul, what if one Shevet got both blanks? They only give 4. That would be like unfair. Moshe didn't anticipate that. Moshe said, "I'm worried which Shvatim are going to get the 5." But why wasn't he worried the same Shevet will get both blanks? But Eldad and Meidad are not from the same Shevet, as we discussed last year. Exactly which. According to one opinion, but it's a machlokes as there were all the different opinions we saw last year. Some say they are from the same Shevet. In fact, their father's Amram. But the Medrash Tanchuma says they're different Shvatim, and that's what we're going to take today. Now, so you see there's a bit of a question about, you can say Yeshua was unsure about this, unsure about that. I want to suggest the following. Look at number 5 for a second. This is just a preamble to our discussion. Number 5 is Menachem Azariah of Panu, the great Kabbalist in the 1500s, early 1600s, lives in Italy, a big Rav, a wealthy man, and one of the greatest Mekubalim. And he discusses Eldad and Meidad. And look at number 5. Let's read what he says. V'gam be'perek kama de Chagiga. We're jumping to number 5. In the first perek of Chagiga, there's a story. There were henu trei ilmi, 2 mute people, dahava b'shvivusei to Rebbe, that were in the neighborhood of Rebbe. Bnei Basrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgada, grandchildren of Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgada. And they were mute. And Rebbe would give shir, and they would just be, nodding with their head, making with their lips, being good students.
Like us.
And Rebbe davened for them; they should be able to speak. And it was exposed. Va'ashtakach, it became apparent that they were gemir. They knew the entire Torah. Sometimes you have students in shir, and they never say a word, and for all you know, they know everything. V'soid ha'inyan, says the Rameh. Who are these 2 mutes that are discussed in Gemara Chagiga? Students of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. Elu trei achin, Eldad and Meidad. They were Gilgulim of Eldad and Meidad. These 2 people in Chagiga are Eldad and Meidad. V'leidasan hoisa oz bedima minisu and hanizka. When they were first born in the times of the desert, they were born amongst tears. V'heim besoy dimas ashukim, the tears of those that are oppressed. Ma'achar, since the get loy hoya belev shalom. The get was not with a full heart. Just to quickly remind you from last year, the opinion of Yonasan ben Oziel is when Amram divorced his wife, when Parah came out with the decree that all the firstborn kids have to be killed, Amram temporarily divorced Yocheved. That we know, it's a Gemara in Soita Rashi quotes. Yonasan ben Oziel says Yocheved remarried someone by the name of Elitzaphan ben Parnach, who comes up in the end of Parshas, in Parshas Maseh, and they had 2 kids, Eldad and Meidad. And then Amram remarried his wife. And we had a whole discussion last year, how was he allowed to remarry her after he divorced her, etc., etc. And the Rameh explained, this is in the same essay, short essay that he has, that Amram divorced her, but he hadn't conditioned that if one day he wants to remarry her, then the get was never valid. So when he remarried his wife, it actually turned out the get was never valid. The problem then is, but then when she lived with Elitzaphan, she was doing adultery, which is another issue. And for that we explained, no, since at the time Yocheved thought it was a good get, there's no prohibition for her to be with Elitzaphan. And it's the exact same as the story of David with Bathsheba. I'm sorry, not Bathsheba. David with Michal, even though Michal had been living with somebody in the interim. Let's not repeat the story. But says Ramemi Panu that because of that issue, Eldad and Medad came back and were born as mutes. Then he says further, Gam l'sibaches, another reason they were mute. Ki pirshu nevuasan shaloi b'shus. Here's the clincher. He says, when does a prophet have to reveal their prophecy? When they were told to by God. But loik siv leimar, it doesn't say Hashem spoke to them leimar to tell over. Therefore, the prophecy they were given, they were not to reveal. Ki ein roy la'imram la'acherim. You should not tell over the message from God if Hashem doesn't say leimar. Hashem showed them a prophecy. It says misnabim, right? Eldad meidad misnabim. It's a Rosh Tevis. Moshe tanuach nafshe begana lekim. Moshe's soul will rest in the garden of God. Yeshua machnis Yeshua will enter us to Eretz Yisrael. That's the word misnabim. V'yotzrichim le'olam anavu. They should have concealed the prophecy until it will be told to them that they have reshus to reveal. And that's why Yeshua was as zealous for his master, and he said, Adoni Moshe kloim, ki pirsimu nuvuasam, because they revealed their prophecy. Oh, he says, and since they spoke out of line when they were Eldad and Medad, therefore they came back as two mutes. Couldn't speak. Because the first time they spoke out of line. Until Rebbe davened for them and they were healed. That's what the Ramemi Pano says. So what's he saying? That the issue Yeshua had with them was not that they were, Yeshua knew they were the real deal, they were true prophets. But they didn't have to say what they said. Because Hashem didn't say lame, or the purpose was to reveal it. So here's the big shaila. So what was Yeshua's problem then? So they did something wrong. But what was Yeshua's suffix? If Moshe is a king, then they're married b'malchus. Yeshua had a suffix if Moshe halachically was a melech or not. There's a big debate if Moshe was a king or not a king. If Moshe was a king, then how do you have the story in Parshas Yisro, when Moshe Shver came, and there was a big meal, Moshe Shver and all the elders, Moshe didn't sit down and eat, he walked around, he was the waiter. How could a melech wait around? How could he be a waiter? He's being meichel on his honor. A melech can't. A rav can, a nasi can, not a king. So many want to prove from that story Moshe didn't have the halachic status of a king. The Rogatchover Tainas, Moshe became a melech when he got the second luchas and he came down on Yom Kippur. Because then Moshe's face shone. That's like a crown. That's when Moshe was given his crown. That's when he became a king. The story of the meal happened earlier. Not so pashut. Many hold the story of the meal happened on that Yom Kippur. And that's why Moshe wasn't eating. He was the only one that was told by God about Yom Kippur. He knew he had to fast. But everyone else, Moshe came down with the second luchas on Yom Kippur. Everyone else had eaten the night before, so their Yom Kippur was blown. Moshe had fasted. He fasted on the mountain. So that's why when Moshe came down, he couldn't eat. Moshe had to camouflage his not eating with the fact he was the waiter. That's what one of the early bells of Rebbe's Tainas. So there's a big... if the meal happened on Yom Kippur, then the Rogatchover's vort falls off. Moshe already came down with his face shining, so if that made him a king, how did he wait around by the meal? The Melech can't do that. What was your shadow?
So isn't the question whether he's a judge, not a king necessarily?
No,
At that
no,
time,
because
there were kings. There were judges, right?
No,
Yeshua, the Rambam holds Yeshua was a melech. The Rambam also says Moshe was a melech. But there's a Ran in one of his droshes who says differently. It's a big debate in the Rishonim. The Rambam writes, if you want to add to the Azor, expand the Azor, you need 70 elders, you need a prophet, you need a king, just like they had it when they had Moshe. He says Moshe was a melech. But there's rayos that he wasn't. So it could be that, like the Ramemi Pano says, Yeshua's problem was the fact that Eldad and Medad spoke out of line. And it was belittling to Moshe. What they said was true, but they didn't have to say it. The shaila is, if Moshe is a melech, then they're murdered in b'malchus, they rebelled against the king. And as such, who knows what the punishment could be. But if Moshe is not really a melech, so then they wanted that punishment. So that may have been the suffix of Yeshua, why Yeshua said, throw him in prison. Anyhow, this is just an introduction. What you see from here is, as far as Chumash and all the stories of Chumash, when do you throw someone in prison? Only when there's a legitimate suffix of what to do with them. Until we clarify, right? Until we clarify, we throw them. Okay, join me in number 3. Number 3 is a Rashi Masechta Sanhedrin. We're going to see today 5 different reasons why you would throw someone in prison. And each of them has a source in Torah. Number 3 is Rashi to Rashi Masechta Sanhedrin. V'Rabbanan hai v'nika hamake. It says in Parshat Mishpatim, 2 guys getting into a fist fight. Reuven knocks out Shimon. Shimon is seriously hurt, severely wounded to the point Shimon may not recover. So it says, if Shimon recovers, then v'nika hamake, then the striker will be absolved. Says Rashi's quoting the Gemara, Malamed shechayv shenoisei. We imprison the striker until we see what happened to the victim. Says Rashi, Imamdu lemisif. The guy was brought straight to the hospital, and they see that he might die from his wounds. Chayv shenes hamaka. We lock up the striker. Shelo yivrach. He shouldn't be a flight risk. He shouldn't escape. Ad shenir, until we can determine im yamos im lav, will he live or not. Lahachi asi. That's why it says v'nika hamake. It says if the victim gets up and he's okay, then v'nika hamake. Mashma, until the mashma likisha yokum, when the victim arises, then v'nika, then the striker is absolved. Miklal, that teaches me ad hashta, until that point, chavoshu, he is restrained, he is held in prison. So this is a similar idea that we're holding him. He shouldn't run. It's until we figure out not what sentence he has, but what crime he committed. So this is already taking it a stage further. In Chumash we see the guy did a crime, right? At least by the Mekalel, we know he did a crime. We don't know the punishment. By the Mekoshish, we know he gets death, don't know which one. Even by Eldod and Meidod, we know they stood out of line. The shaila is, how bad was it? Here, we Bechlal don't know if this guy's a murderer or not. Right? We don't know if there really is a crime yet. But since the victim is in hospital, we don't know what's going to happen. So we hold on, we imprison, we incarcerate the striker until it's discovered if there in fact was a crime or not.
There is a crime, we just don't know how severe it is.
No, but not a crime to lock him up for. Stomach punch, yeah. So this takes us to number 4. Number 4, we take it perhaps even a stage further. Number 4 is a Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin. Rabbi Yirmiyah b'shem Rab Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Number 4, Zoisai Meretz Shedonin Misafik. Rabbi Yirmiyah is proving from him, the Mishnah there said if someone was accused of cursing God, then we listen to the story, but only at the end we ask the Eidim, tell us exactly what you heard. We want to rehear the entire curse. Only at the end of the case. So says the Gemara, what does that mean? The entire court case, we haven't even heard the clincher. We don't hear the actual evidence of what the curse was until the end. And that's crucial. Until you hear word for word what the cursor said, you can't punish him. So that teaches me, Don in Misafik, we can go through a whole court case without actually having real evidence to start off with. So says the Gemara, wait, this is the Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin. Wait a second. Hey Chavide. What case are you trying to insinuate, to intimate from here? That ploining harages hanefesh, that if someone comes to court and says, Reuven killed Shimon, we're going to lock up Reuven, Reuven will be locked up, and until the witnesses come, it doesn't make any sense. Amalei Rab Yosi doesn't make sense. V'tafsin barnosha b'shuka, you're going to grab someone in the street, and you're going to lock him up and belittle him without any hard evidence, can't be. Or rather, pshat's like this. If Kaini ploini harages hanefesh, if people tell Bezin Reuven killed Shimon, v'harei eidov, and there are witnesses that Reuven killed Shimon, yehei tofus, we're going to lock Reuven up achi avoyo eidov, until the witnesses come. What changed in the Gemara's conclusion from its original thought? The original thought was Bezin hears a rumor. And the question was, how could they go to the street and lock someone up based on a rumor? So what did we change? So the Pnei Moshe on the side, the Pnei Moshe Margolis, he was actually a teacher of the Vilna Gaon for a short while when the Vilna Gaon was a kid, and he wrote a fascinating commentary on the Yerushalmi, although the Rogatchover was not a fan.
It's not the same Margolis as cousin.
You can't get away from them. You can't get away from them. It could be this is Moshe Margolis, and the other guy is Ephraim Zalman Margolius. Margoliot or Margalit? Margalit or Margaliut?
Definitely in the hospitals, for sure, if they're not here.
come learn for his refuah. This will help.
I'm gonna go visit. I'm gonna go to Mount Sinai.
No, this will be more effective. This will be more effective.
We learned that in this
I don't do
year.
that. I do the physical. I do the requirement stuff.
Anyhow, so the Pnei Moshe, it's not so clear in the Pnei Moshe, but it sounds like in the conclusion, the Bezdin is actually told who the Eidim are. It's not just a rumor. They're told who the Eidim are, and more than that, it could be they heard, it could be the Eidim said, yes, we have testimony. So the Bezdin knows that there is alleged testimony, but it takes time. That the Eidim can only come tomorrow at 3 p.m. This guy's going to be a flight risk, so we lock him up. So from the Yishalma, you see, you can even lock someone up when you b'chlal don't even know if he committed a crime. It's still only hearsay. The Eidim said they have testimony. All right, maybe maybe not. So this is like as far as we take it. But the Yerushalmi does say, if it would be mamish only hearsay, we wouldn't lock him up. It's
Saying what do you mean you're saying? Like
people saying it has to be Bezdin knows who the official Eidim are.
Yes.
The story began, we just haven't interrogated them yet. But anything below that, the Yerushalmi said, is taking away the person's rights. You can't arrest someone in the street and belittle him. It's taking away his rights of freedom.
The law today.
Probable cause.
Probably that the law today is the same thing. You can't just arrest a person without any, because the arrest person.
Not
you
so
have to get
fast.
That's changing.
To arrest person, you have to get the okay from the
Okay.
judge, no?
So from here, we'll hold on, we'll see. So all the sources we've seen until now, the stories in Chumash, the story in this week's parasha, Rashi in Sanhedrin, the Yerushalmi Sanhedrin, they're all cases of locking somebody up until we can determine what their sentence is, or how bad their crime was, or b'chal if they did a crime. But it's never to serve as a punishment in and of itself. That takes us to number 6. Somebody defaults on a loan. They refuse to pay. Either they have the cash or they don't have the cash. If someone has the cash and refuses to pay, what can Bezdin do to him? So look at number 6. This is the Tur in the Beis Yosef in Siman Tzadik Zayin and Choshen Mishpat. So number 6, the bold in the middle is from the Tur, and the small words on the right hand side is the Rabbi Yosef Kara's commentary. Says the Tur Lamed Aleph in number 6. V'kasav Adoni Avi HaRosh, he quotes his father, the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher B'tshuva. Afilu hisna al atzmai, even if the borrower originally made a condition to the lender, and he said, if I default on the loan, sheyitfais hamal veskufa, you could lock me up. When the borrower wants the money, the lender says, what's the guarantee going to pay back? He says, my life. If I don't pay you, you can lock me up in the dungeon. So the malva, the lender's like, this guy's, so the malva's like, all right, if you're willing to go so far, I could actually do some more company in my cells underground, right? He lends him the money. The time comes to pay, he defaults. Says the Rosh, even if he made the condition, the cost of loibish, and he wrote a document, Eina moil, it's of no effect. Eina yachol, the lender has no ability, loyla asra, he can't
Enforce.
imprison the borrower. V'loy lishtabet, but neither can he use him as a slave. One gets sold as a slave for stealing, not for defaulting on a loan. The issue is if someone has the money to pay but refuses, according to many Rishonim, they're mamash a ganav. But they're a passive ganav. You don't get sold for being a passive ganav, only for active theft. If someone's an active
But it's
thief,
intentional.
doesn't matter, but it's passive.
How
No,
is it passive?
because you're a thief by not paying. That's why. That's called passive.
No, you're on the contrary.
How so?
You're not only that, you made a contract and you're denying the validity of the contract from your signature because you're not
The
living
contract
up to
isn't
it.
the contract. Such a contract is void. The Eibusha doesn't allow.
Look, if I take money
The
from you,
Eibusha says we are his servants, not servants to anybody else. There's an exception if somebody actively steals and doesn't have to pay back, he gets sold. Any other time, one is not allowed to be sold. And therefore, the lender has no right to take you, not as a slave, not to imprison you. That's it. The buck stops there. God said no. The condition isn't binding. Finished. Imagine you made a condition of a pound of flesh, the well-known story. Shlomo Yosef Zevin, the great Chabad scholar in Eretz Yisrael from decades back, who wrote the encyclopedia the big encyclopedia, Talmudis. So he wrote an article about a pound of flesh, the Shakespeare story, Merchant of Venice. And he got lots of flack. Oh, why are you discussing Shakespeare? Many Rabbanim weren't happy that he was bringing that story into a halachic discussion. But the truth is, such a condition is not valid. It's not binding. It's not binding. And the lender is biblically prohibited to take a pound of flesh, or to incarcerate you, or to put you into servitude. Done. That's what the Torah says. The shaila is, what about Bezdin? What can Bezdin do to enforce you to pay? So we had a shir a while ago that when it comes to a mitzvah aseh, any mitzvah aseh that someone doesn't want to do, Bezdin can use all the force necessary. All necessary force. And we had a debate between the Rambam and Rabbeinu Yoina. The Rambam says you can kill someone. The Rambam says you can twist their hand until it hurts, and if the person doesn't cave, they'll die from the pain. It doesn't bother us. That's a debate we learned between the K'sois HaChoshen and the Nesivis. We learned to debate if it applies today or not. But Rabbeinu Yoina said it doesn't mean to kill the guy. It just means to, twist his hand until he agrees. But if he's so adamant, then you just leave him. You don't kill him. But the Rambam says you could. So that means if someone doesn't want to pay the loan, we can push it. Torture the guy. Well, you can't put him in. You can do everything but put him in prison. So let's see. We have a big debate between Rabbi Yosef Kara and the Ramah, between the Sfardim and the Ashkenazim. So look in number 6 in the number 6, back to number 6 on the paragraph surrounding the Torah's Beis Yosef. The Kasav Adoni in the bold letters is quoting the Torah that the Rosh writes in a letter. Klal Samaches and Yud. What? In number 6, the Beis Yosef, the Rashi letters. Okay. Yeah. The second line. The Chen Kasav Harashba B'tshuva. The Rashba in a letter also writes like the Rosh, that even if the borrower made whatever condition stipulated, you could put me in prison, it's not binding. And then the Chen Kasav Harivosh, and we'll see the Tshuva the Rivosh soon. Va'afalpi says Rabbi Yosef Kadosh Shematzasi Kasav I found b'shem Sefer Aguda. There's a Sefer called the Aguda. Rabbi Alexander HaKoyen is a Koyen. He was a student of the Mordechai. He was also a Koyen. The Mordechai was killed in 1298 in the Rheinfleisch massacres in Germany, and unfortunately, the Aguda, his student, was murdered by the plague of the Black Plague in 1349. And many believe he was murdered then. With tens of thousands of Yidden were killed during the Black Plague in 1348 in Western Europe. 1348, 1349. Because millions of people died, and they blamed the Jews for poisoning the wells. It was one of the worst in the Middle Ages, one of the worst. Some say 50,000 Yidden were killed or something, could be more. Horrible. The Mordechai was a student of the Maharam, who was not a Kohen. That breaks the Kohen, so we don't mention him. The Maharam of Rottenburg, we don't mention. Anyhow, so the Aguda says like this. The Adam, we're in the 4th line of the Beis Yosef. Sheyesh loy ve'eina mishalem. If someone has a cash but refuses to pay, chayv shenoise, Bezdin will imprison him. Bezdin will imprison someone who refuses to pay. Ve'hevi rai, he brings a proof because it says in Shabbos, Abba Bar Marta, there was a fellow Abba Bar Marta, he was an Amora. Havamaski bezusa, he owed money to Beireish Galusa, to the house of the exile ark, of the Jewish family that was the nobility in Bavel, and Abba Bar Marta owed them money. Now, Havamatzari, they pained him, they actually schlepped him, they kidnapped him, and they brought him to the house of the Reish Galusa, and they tried to force him to pay. You see from there that if someone doesn't want to pay, you take extreme measures, you can use force. Says the Beis Yosef, Nirali the Lav Raya, bad proof. Those people that were in the house of the Reish Galusa, of the exile ark, maybe they were servants of a rotten exile ark. Many of these Reish Galusas, the heads of the Galus, were unscrupulous fellows. And often their servants were worse than them. So there's no proof. And he quotes a couple Gemaras. And he finishes off the last line, V'havda avda shaloi kedin. It could be they acted improperly. But what's Rabbi Yosef? So Rabbi Yosef Kaira is knocking off the proof of the Aguda. The Aguda wanted to prove from the story in Shabbos, says that Beis Yosef, there's no raya. But what Rabbi Yosef Kaira is doing, he's making a debate. Rabbi Yosef Kaira says the Rosh, the Rashba, and the Rivosh all say you can't incarcerate the guy. The Aguda says you can. The Rosh is originally from Germany. He's yeah, he can. He can. Sure, he can. Well, he's before the Rivosh, and the Aguda was a couple years younger than the Rosh and the Rashba. The Rosh passes away 1327. He passes away 1349. Why can he argue? He's 20 years younger. The Aguda is 20. So the Rosh starts off in Germany. The Rosh passes away in Toledo in Spain. The Rashba lives in Barcelona in Spain. The Rivosh is also in Spain till the end of his life when he went to Algeria. But so the Spanish Rishonim said none of this stuff. The Aguda is in Germany. Aguda is Ashkenazi. He's in Germany. And the Aguda, so it sounds like it's almost a debate between the Sfaradim and Ashkenazim. The Sfaradish Rishonim don't allow to lock up someone for defaulting on a loan, and the Ashkenazim allow it. Comes the Ramah in number 7 and says he thinks Rabbi Yosef Kaira is not correct here. He thinks there's no debate. The Sfaradim are talking about when the guy doesn't have what to pay. That's why you don't lock him up. The Aguda is talking about when he has what to pay. According to the Ramah, there's no debate. If someone has the money, you can twist his arm until he dies, according to the Rambam. Why can't you lock him up? Look at the Ramah. Number 7 is the Darchei Moshe. Says the Ramah, venerally it seems to me, Ein hadover tzarich raya. The Aguda's din doesn't even need a raya. It's so obvious you could lock someone up. Ma'acher sheyesh lo, if someone has the money, ve'ein haroitz l'shem, doesn't want to pay, koif v'noisa b'chom, it will force him in whatever way possible. Because priyas bal chayv is a mitzvah, paying back is a mitzvah, u'makinoisa will hit him on tzateit nafshay to fulfill the mitzvah. And like the Tur himself says earlier, and so does the Rivosh, in the tshuva that the Beis Yosef quotes, and we're going to see it on the next page, the Rivosh also mentions this idea, that it makes sense to force someone to pay, because paying is like any mitzvah, it's no worse than any mitzvah. Says the Ramah, Rabbi Yosef Kaira quoted a Rosh, he quoted a Rashba, Ein koyach la'asra, we can't incarcerate him, v'loy l'shtabed, but not to put him in servitude. Hainu k'she'ein lo l'shtabed, that's when he doesn't have the money. Avol k'sheyesh lo, if he has and he doesn't want to pay, shaloye reshus lebezin l'chav shala'asra b'chol dover, to say that Bezin can't incarcerate him, zeh lo y'ol al das, doesn't make any sense. Kain nirali, that for sure you're able to. He finishes off that the Rivosh writes in the above mentioned tshuva, if the borrower swore that if he defaults on the loan, he'll have to go to prison until he pays, then he has to go to prison just to fulfill his oath. Because that has nothing to do with the lender. You made an oath, you have to do it. But what do you see from the Ramah? Big debate. Rabbi Yosef Kaira learns the Sfaradish Rishonim don't allow the incarceration. The Ashkenazim do. The Ramah says there's no debate. It depends if the guy has the money or not. If he doesn't, then don't touch him. If he has, everyone will agree you incarcerate him. So this is already another Indian of putting someone in prison. It's as a method of force. It's not as a punishment. It's as a method of force. In fact, there's a Rashi in Masechta Psachim. The Gemara there speaks about somebody who was unable to be by the Shchita because he's in prison. Rashi says, why is he in prison? By the Yidden. Rashi says, for example, he didn't want to divorce his wife, or he defaulted on a loan. You see from Rashi clearly that there are times a person could be put in jail, not as a punishment, but as a method of force. If someone doesn't want to divorce his wife when he has to, you could put him in jail. It's a clear Rashi. And Rashi also gives the example of money. Just like so you'd see Rashi, the Aguda.
By the get, I understand it's helping to give the get, but if you don't have the money, what's that?
No, if he has the money. If he has the money. Yeah, if he has the money. If he has the money.
Are you allowed to make him, because it seems like, especially from the Ramah, that an extra way to do it is you make the guy swear. Because that way you're covering all bases. But are you allowed to make somebody make a shua?
No, none of it's to their harm.
Right.
You could,
Once
The question:
after
how are
Ramadan,
you
they pay
making?
back.
How you?
Say,
you?
I'm not giving you the money unless you make a
Knock on someone
independent
else's
shul.
door. Knock on someone else's door.
No, but if the guy has no choice. He
The
needs to
problem is,
come.
what do you gain from it?
You gain that the guy's not going to be able to get out of it, because even if the guy tries to, you gain the tour.
Yeah, but that's what you gain. What do you
That's what
lose?
you
And
gain.
what do you lose?
Right.
That a Jew will suffer on your account. So you have to
Nah,
weigh it
it's
up.
not he's suffering. This is assuming he can pay you back. The question is, are you allowed?
Yeah, but
to make-
until he comes up with the money, he's going to be suffering in that jail cell.
No. The whole point of the tour and everybody, the Ramah is saying, if he doesn't have the money, he doesn't. So you make him make a shvuah. As long as he has the money, he has to pay you back. But the question is, are you allowed to make somebody make a shvuah?
I understand your.
Meaning you're not allowed to have somebody. People are not allowed to just random make
Oh,
shvuahs.
you're asking because of that. I thought
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
asking
only for that.
No, if you deny him the guilt, unless he takes the oath to go in prison, and
Yeah.
he makes the oath, and if he doesn't want to pay, he'll go in jail until he decides to pay.
Yeah.
You know.
But are you allowed to
then,
make him
then,
make
then
an
he's
extra
going to be
shvuah?
going into jail on your account. You're going to have a hand in the yid going into jail, which
But he has the money to pay.
Right,
you
right,
don't have
so,
to go
yeah,
to jail. Pay
yeah.
me. But the
The only
question is,
thing-
are you
the
allowed to
only
make him
thing
make
is
an extra
it's-
shvuah?
If who said the shvu is connected to if he has to pay or not, if he has what to pay or not? Who's going to judge if he has what? If the shvu is he's going to go to jail only if he has what to pay,
No,
he'll say the stuff I have doesn't belong to me. It's under my wife's name. How you ever prove that?
Bezdin.
When
There's
no,
always a
well,
way.
it's not so simple. When the Rivash speaks about the shvu, the Rivash doesn't get into the detail if he has what to pay or not. If someone makes an oath to go into a prison cell, until he pays, he has to fulfill his
but I'm
oath.
talking about a clever
It's not
way
a gay
to do
whether
it.
he has or not. It's until somehow someone will gift him the guilt out of Rahmanas.
How does Bezdin ever put somebody in jail and decide if he can pay or not? Bezdin has a way. You have the auditors come in, you audit the guy. So the question is,
But the din of the Rivash wasn't said. The Shvur case wasn't speaking about if he has what to pay or not.
no, I'm saying you do it as an for lenders. The Gemara many times, and Torah many times says for lenders, in order so that they should lend, we don't want to block them. We don't want to make, that's why we do all these contracts to get around Yovel and this and that, to not block the lenders from
Shaloi Tinal Delis. Yes,
right?
yes.
So we
not
don't want to
block-
close the door. So if you
Right,
know a
right.
guy's going to go and always say, according to the tour, you can't throw me in jail. They write in a contract. Throw me in jail. Then everybody knows that's unenforceable. Unless, according to Ramah, he makes a shvuah.
It's not prohibited to do that.
So I'm saying, can you force a guy to make a shvuah? 'Cause
You're not
generally-
forcing him. He
Well,
can borrow the money from
Can,
elsewhere.
can you be a part of a guy making a shvuah? Because shvuahs are generally, we're not supposed to make shvuahs.
Right, I understand your question.
So
Now,
that's
I was
the-
just adding that maybe your question could be you're also going to be having a part in a Jew going to jail.
No, that
which
the
is
Bezdin will take care. If you're lying, you're lying. If you're kosher, the same way the Bezdin checks you out in general, they'll check you out here. Just adding an extra safeguard, so the guy can't wiggle out and take money that isn't his.
Yeah, you can
Keep
do
money
that.
that
Yeah,
isn't
you can
his.
do that. Yes, yes. Okay, so this is another dimension of jail, not as a punishment, but as an enforcement to make sure the guy divorces the wife, pays the money. Right. It's an element of force, and once the person does that, they'll be released. They'll be released. So that's the second thing. Okay, go to the next page. Number 8 is actually the letter of the Rivash. Let's see this.
I'm sorry to get back to that because I really like the position, and you mentioned to put him in jail as an enticement to pay. Does the Beit Din in that case have the right to go to his property, to his house, and collect the debt that is owed
Yeah.
to the lender?
Yeah.
So then
Yes.
the jail part can become mute.
Yeah, but he hides his assets. He hides his assets.
In the old days, it was
Sure,
easy.
no, the Mavriach Nechasim, we have it all the time. People used to hide their assets. Hello, it's been happening. It's been happening ever since. It's been happening ever since. Anyhow, look at number 8. This is the Rivash. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Sheshes. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Sheshes. Actually, it's interesting. He himself was thrown into prison. He was born in 1326 in Spain. And he grows up in Barcelona. He learns under the Ran, the famous Ran Rabbeinu Nissim. In fact, at some point, he and the Ran and some other Chacham were thrown into jail. There was some libel. The Spanish authorities threw them into prison for about half a year. Long time. And then the Rivash, Rabbi Yitzchak, became a Rav in different parts of Spain. Ultimately, he left Spain in the Great Expulsion in 1391. 101 years before the bigger one in 1492, there was one in 1391 that was also awful, and the Christians gave the Jews the same 3 options: to escape the country, which many did, many were killed, many converted. Also, tens of thousands of Jews were killed then. and many converted. In fact, Reb Shem Tov, Ibn Shem Tov, there were two Rishonim with that name, Reb Shem Tov, Ibn Shem Tov. There was a Zayd and there was a grandchild. The Zayd was a Kabbalist, and he wrote the Sefer HaEmunos. He was the one who coined the term that the Ralbag Sefer, Mulchamas Hashem, is Mulchamas Im Hashem, war against God. Reb Shem Tov, Ibn Shem Tov, the first one, lived during the 1391 episode in Spain, and he was very much against philosophy, and he writes, you know who caved, you know who converted due to the pressure? All those that were rationalists that studied philosophy. But the Jews with simple belief in God, they either they scrammed, or they died, or some other age, but they didn't convert. It was only the rationalists. And the same thing is recorded also in 1492.
Rational, what is
Chokrim, the philosophers. Also masculine, similar, But these were from people, but they were, taken by Goyshe philosophy, etc. Anyhow, so during the 1391 story, the Rivosh went down south to Algeria, where he was a Rav for a couple of years, passes away in 1408. So he's towards the end of the Rishonim. Look what he says in number 8. Ube'emes, it's true, ki bireinu zois, in this city, noigin hadayon in litfos haloiva begufay kishin is chayev came. They would grab the borrower by his body when he became chayev.
When he became chayav?
What does it mean, kishin is chayev came?
When the debt is due.
Does that mean when the debt is due, or does that mean if they made the condition? Remember, the Rosh said even if you make a condition, it doesn't work. It could be that the Rivosh is talking about that in his city, when the condition was made, they would enforce it. Hu mitzad takonas hakahal. That's the takon of the kahal. V'oid, in addition, tikno kahal, sha'af b'loy chiyev, even without any obligation. Yitofes kol adam, anyone can be imprisoned. Al kol tviyishes, on any claim will be imprisoned. Now that's just crazy. Or yitin arevin, what you do is someone has a tviya against you, you can give a collateral to Bezdin. Ala tviya nikra kiyam Bezdin. You can either give a collateral to Bezdin, or they will incarcerate you until they find out what the deal is. Which is very strange, because we saw in the Yerushalmi number 4 that if you don't have any hard evidence, you can't just go in the street and incarcerate someone.
No, but
But here it seems like I'll call Tvi on any claim, you'll incarcerate the guy.
But he's talking about Jewish Beit Din, or
Yeah,
he's
Jewish
talking
people.
about the country or
Jewish.
state?
I wanted to stop them on this takana because it's loikedin teresain, it's against Judaism. But they said no, it's takana sashuk b'pnei amoyin. We need to do this because there were swindlers everywhere.
Seems like it's a city, impose special conditions.
V'shaloin blinol delus b'fnei lavin, because if you couldn't do that, no one would lend money.
Yeah.
So you need to give the lenders this power, or else they won't lend in the first place. V'nachtim. So the Rivosh says, I let it go. V'nachtim, I let it go.
But this against the Torah, right? Still.
Yeah, no, but the people said taka, but there's desperate times, call for desperate measures.
Special times.
Desperate times, they had to, right.
Makes sense.
Too many people borrow without to give the money back. That's the problem in this time.
Too many people were cheating, were borrowing, and then
To borrow.
in other words,
No,
they would
swindlers.
as long as the borrower would know there's no hard evidence, he would deny the claim or this and that. So they had to take a stronger stance. You're thrown in jail, and then
But the jail is a Jewish jail, right?
Like now.
Oh,
that's what it seems like. Yeah.
so the Jewish jail.
You should know in Spain, the rabbis had so much power. When the Rosh moved to Spain from Germany, because when the Maram of Rothenburg died in jail, the Rosh knew they're coming after him next. So he ran from Germany, he went down south to Spain, and he went to Barcelona, the Rashba was there. They spent a week together in the room, speaking and learning. Then the Rashba said, I have a job for you. He got a job in Toledo for the Rosh to be the Rav. The Rosh is in Toledo, and the story happens, there was a guy walking outside, blaspheming a Jew, was just cursing out Yiddishkeit. And people asked the Rosh, now listen, in the Goyish Welt, they would kill such a person. If we don't punish him, it's going to incite a pogrom, the Goyim will, they wanted to kill him. So the Rosh says, listen, I come from Germany. In Germany, we don't give out, the Rabbanim don't give capital punishment. We stopped that when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, We don't give capital punishment. He says, I'm not used to what they do here in Spain, so I don't think we should kill him, but I think we should just cut out his tongue. That way he'll never blaspheme again. He said, let's have Rachmanas and just cut out his tongue. That was the compassionate rabbi, you understand? So,
And tell me, when you do something, the government doesn't say anything?
no, they gave them the power, fakir. The kings
they-
of Aragon, they gave the
rabbis
Rajba,
the power.
yeah, mamish power, full power.
And with that power, still there was all these explosions in the earth.
It wasn't
Later
always
on.
the same, Jay. It was
No,
all it
yeah,
takes is
yeah.
Vayakam Melech Chodesh. All it takes is
Mamash,
one
they have-
change
they
and
have-
everything
they have
goes
their
on.
own-
What happens every time we have a
everything.
different
When
president?
in the end of the 1200s, the life was good. Life in Spain.
Golden Age is Jewish, Spanish Jewish.
So the Jewish people back then, Mamash have their own court, jail, everything.
Yes.
Very powerful.
Yeah,
Kill
yeah.
themselves.
Not just that. Even they're more the police. The Jewish police were more powerful than the Rav, like you see over here. They were given.
It seems like there was a threat to the Jewish community. This
Right.
guy
Yeah, it's going to
wasn't
be
just
chaos. It's going to be chaos.
Yeah, they could have caused
Right.
them a drama.
But look at the next paragraph. Says the Rivash. This is the Rivash continuing. Avol, he says, Im aloy va'ani. If the borrower is poor, he doesn't have what to pay. Hadavar borish also l'tafsa begufa. You can't incarcerate him. If the guy doesn't have what to pay, you can't throw him in prison and to afflict him.
It won't do any good.
No, because maybe someone will have compassion and pay for him.
Oh.
No, that would be the hope. But the guy didn't do anything wrong. He's a poor man. Why would you do that to him? No, the lender would want it because he knows that people will have compassion and bail the guy out by
Go
paying.
fund me.
Exactly. Va'afim nischayev bazeh b'shtar. Even if there was a document, even if the borrower wrote a document, vayatnai moil min adin, and even if, let's say, the condition would work, we saw already the Rosh says it doesn't. Right? We saw in the Torah number 6 quotes from Father the condition does, but even if it would, because I feel a laver fun of, even if it would work, the lender has no right to exercise the power to incarcerate. The lender's not even allowed to walk in front of the borrower to embarrass him, like it says in Ezo Neshech. It says, "Menayin l'noishe b'chavei." If Reuven is owed money by Shimon, the idea by Reuven knows she'ein Shimon can't pay, also to walk in front of him, because it says lo'isi lo'kanoishe, you can't demand from him. So, how could Bezdin, if Reuven can't even harass Shimon for the money, how could Reuven incarcerate Shimon? Even if Shimon wrote a document that'll be incarcerated, and even if somehow the condition would work on Shimon's end, we would never allow Reuven to exercise that right. Eichiyu Bezdin is kokan l'sayir b'dvari. How could we allow Reuven to do this? And the Kol Shekain, he says that the condition b'chlal doesn't work, like I wrote above. And he actually earlier in the Tshuva he quotes the Rosh as well. He says the Rosh mit Tulu from Toledo. And then he says, Ve'eini roya shum tzad achar. I don't see any other reason that it should be allowed the tofsoi begufoi to incarcerate him if he doesn't have what to pay.
This is self-help. There's no self-help.
Elim kain, unless he swore. This is where the Rivosh says if he swore. We saw the Ramon number 7 quotes this idea. Here it is. If he swore to place himself in prison, not to leave until he pays, v'zeo ke'ein ustagis. I don't know, ustagis. Maybe you go ask your Spanish cleaning lady what that might mean. If he swore something else, because it's nothing to do with Reuven the lender, it's to do with Shimon the borrower. He swore. If Shimon, in order to appease Reuven to lend him the money, swore that he'll take upon himself incarceration until he pays, that's his personal oath. But otherwise, we can never allow Reuven to take Shimon to prison. We would never put Shimon in prison if he doesn't have what to pay.
Right.
So it's funny that in the Rav Yosef Cairo quoted the Rivosh, you can't incarcerate. The Ramos says Rivosh clearly is talking about he doesn't have what to pay.
Yeah.
The Aguda says he's talking about if he does have what to pay. So there's no debate. There's no debate. You have to read the whole Shuv of the Rivosh. It could be anyways. So this is another dimension of jail that is in order to impress upon a person to fulfill their it's a way of force to make sure they fulfill their dues, but not as a punishment. Let's just finish up. Number 10 is a third element of jail. So far we have what? The guy shouldn't be a flight risk. We should figure out what to do with him, like Eldad and Meidad and all the sources we saw. We saw a second thing, which is to make sure the person
Debt.
does what they have
The
to
debt.
do, the debts or the
Financial
divorce
debt.
the wife, right? Number 10 is a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. Ha'hoidig nefesh shaloi be'edim. If someone kills someone without witnesses. Machnisin oiser lekippa, we put him into a small cell. Machilan oiser, we feed him lechem tsar or mayim lachatz. Bare water, bare bread, and they'll end up dying from starvation. Or that the bread, if you feed, there's another idea that you could stuff him up with barley until his stomach
Isn't that
explodes.
a case where everybody knows it's
So,
clear? the guy did it?
so the Gemara wants to know if there's no witnesses, how do you know? So the Gemara says that the witnesses were, they contradicted each other on a subtlety. So the guy was off the hook on a technicality. So here you see that there's that
Bezin has the power.
here we imprison him as a punishment, but it's only to lead to the death. Right? It's not that the imprisonment itself is a
To
punishment.
starve him. What's it?
It's because we can't kill him actively because we don't have enough evidence, so we have to have him die passively. But it's not for the prison is just a means to an end.
It's a means to
It's
kill.
a means to an end. Exactly.
not-
Exactly.
it's not-
So this is the third issue. Then we have this is the clincher is the Rambam here in number 11. No one knows the source of this Rambam. The Rambam wrote it. No one knows the source of it.
What does that mean that he didn't?
The Rambam quotes Halacha, and we have no source of an earlier Gemara, Bavli, anything that says this. Nothing.
Which sefer is this?
It's in Hilchas Reitzeach, the laws of murdering, the second parak. The Rambam is talking, what if someone hires a hitman? We know, we have Aiden that Reuven hired a hitman to kill Shimon.
Assassin.
Huh?
Assassin.
A hitman who Sachar, Reuven Sachar,
Rotzach Sachir.
Mishu Yitzchak et Shimon.
Sachir.
Yeah. Says the Rambam, or he gives another example. What if you tie up someone and then the animals come and they kill him? V'chol elu haratzchanim v'kiyetze behen. These types of murderers, she'einon, we're number 11. Einon mechuyav and Mrs. Bezdin. Bezdin can't kill them because they only caused the murder or they hired an assassin. Bezdin can't kill someone for hiring an assassin. But imratza melech Yisrael lahargam, if the king wants to kill them bedin malchus with the authority of the king, v'takana sa'ilam, to fix the world, Rashus the king could kill him. The melech has the right to step in and kill the guy. V'chein, so to not just the bezdin. Bezdin have the right to give unauthorized punishments if the time is necessary. It's a Gemara in Yavamas. This has a right. If Bezdin wants to make an exception that the desperate times call for desperate measures, was necessary, they have reshus based on what they see. But then he says next halacha, what if the king didn't kill them? And the shah and Bezdin, it wasn't like murder was a rampant. It was a one-off story. So Bezdin didn't feel like they have the right to kill him. Hare Bezdin chayovin mikol mokum. They still lahakoisa makarabba. Bezdin should seriously beat this guy to a pulp. Hakroiv lemisser, close to death. V'leser oisan, and to imprison him b'motzer or motzik in a horrible prison. Shonim rabbis, many years. The only time where we have prison as a punishment. Uletzaron, and to torture them b'chol minei tzar, in order that others should be afraid. And to intimidate other wicked people, that they shouldn't do the same thing and say, Hareini Mesaviv, I will cause to kill my enemies, like Reuven did, and Reuven was off the hook. So we'll say Reuven was not off the hook. This is the only source we have of keeping someone in prison for many years, yeah?
Can you just give an example? There was a guy in Russia, my time, that anyone, he became a special title teller to the government, and he caused a lot of them that they should be put in jail or killed and so on and so forth. And so it was a person, private person, that since it's a title teller, well, if I got a
Muslim.
Muslim.
A Mesa. They said that they were allowed to bring such a thing that they should kill him. The way I recall, they didn't know it. The Davidice his name was. But I don't think, because they were afraid that fear to tell, because they had the hands with the government, and then a lot of these Jews would suffer much more.
Yeah, so it wasn't worth it.
So Taka got rid of him?
No, they were scared to. If they would
They're
kill him,
scared
then there
or
would be
afraid to do
worse
something.
repercussions from the government.
They did not have the official authority.
Anyhow, the fifth reason to incarcerate someone would be that they're a threat to the public, right? In fact, that's often a reason someone's put behind bars, because they continue to be a threat. They killed once, they'll kill again. That is definitely something the Torah believes in. The only thing is, if the reason you're incarcerating them is to save the public, then they can be in nicer conditions. They don't have to be suffering in horrible conditions. You want to take away their freedom because of what they might do to others.
But then there's a
But
detriment
then
factor.
the only right you have is just to bar them from society.
No, but
You
Rambam's
know?
also talking about a detriment factor.
Right. So
Deterrent.
the Rambam is talking about when this guy may no longer be a threat.
It's
It
a
could be
deterrent to others.
also for him not to do it in the first place.
Right, there's two.
But,
the
yeah.
Rambam says, but you want to make him miserable, so you're talking
Exactly,
about
for
others.
others. Right.
should
But obviously
know.
also for him
Yeah, he needs his
with the
punishment.
foresight. No. If he knows this is what's going to happen, it will dissuade him from doing
I
the
see,
crime
it's
in the
when
first
you let
place.
him out.
If he knows that they have the power
If
to
he
do
knows he's
this,
going to be suffering 20
That's
years
the
in the dungeon,
deterrent.
he won't do it.
That's
It's a
what he's
deterrent.
talking about at the
But
end,
even
the
for him,
deterrent.
a deterrent for him, they're not to do it in the first place. Jail time is a
What
deterrent
comes
for
first,
the.
the
Jail
horse or
time
cart?
jail time is usually a deterrent for the
To
criminal
normal
themselves.
people, yes.
They shouldn't do it because if they do, they'll be incarcerated.
Right, but you have to do it to the first guy
And yet-
to
Yes,
deter the
yeah.
next one. There always
No,
has to be a
right,
first guy
right,
that the
right.
Rambam's
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
You beat him
okay.
up,
Granted,
and everybody else afterwards.
Fine, granted.
And
And-
yet the jails are full everywhere in the world. Just like in Israel, if you're
Okay.
going to attempt to be a terrorist, you're going to have a capital punishment, that they do it.
You know what they say? There was a shikr, a drunk. He wakes up in prison. He asks the police, "Why am I here?" Says, "For excessive drinking." Says, "Wonderful. When do we begin?" Anyhow, so generally speaking, there's five reasons, let's say, for jail. The reason we find in Chumash is until the sentencing. It's like prison before the sentencing. The person shouldn't run away. We have to figure out what the punishment is, or if there was a crime, or etc., etc. And that we have good. And that's actually what Yeshua probably did as well with Eldad and Meida, till we figure out what to do with them. That's for
what he
sure.
wanted to
That's
do,
for
they
sure.
tried to put them
Halachically
in.
granted. What?
that's what Yeshua wanted to do, or they Taka put them in jail.
Yeshua wanted to know. Moshe was Michael. It goes back to Yeshua wasn't sure if Moshe was considered a king or not.
Right.
Moshe's response was, "I'm not a king. I could be Michael. I could be Michael." What they did. The second thing we saw is when jail is used as a technique of force to enforce someone to do what they have to do, and that we saw. Rabbi Yosef Kar is not supportive. The Ramah is. In fact, the Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz says that in his times in Germany, 250 years ago, jails was it was a norm of life. That if someone would default on a loan when they have what to pay, it was a necessary element of force that was used. It was used. Rashi in Mesachim says someone doesn't want to divorce his wife, and he has to. The Yidden could lock him up until he's ready. The third thing we saw was when somebody gets off on a technicality for murder, we'll throw him into a prison cell and feed him barley or food until his stomach explodes, etc. Which is prison being used as not a means to it, not an end in itself, but a means to an end. Just we want him to die passively. The fourth thing is we saw in the Rambam, though, number 11, the Rambam does say, it's the only source that we have, an idea of keeping someone in jail for years because their crime was an atrocity, atrocious, and it serves as a punishment.
But it's
More is for the other people to be dissuaded
It
from
seems
doing
like
the
the
crime.
Rambam's establishing that. It doesn't. I don't see where it says here that he's basing it on anything other than he's creating the same way the Ritvash says that.
No, so why do you throw in prison? Just say you beat him to a pulp until they're almost dead.
He's talking about a new philosophy, which is
Well,
the world has taken on about the term.
And the fifth thing of jail is when you're holding someone back that they're a potential threat to society. The Rebbe spoke about jail many times, and he spoke about the fact that in Torah you don't find jail used as a punishment. And the Rebbe said because in Torah sometimes someone needs a big slap. They get the slap, whether it's a whopping monetary fine or it's malchus or something, and they pick themselves up and they continue with their lives, hopefully with a changed attitude. But stam to lock up someone for 10 years, 20 years, God wants, they're here, they're living and breathing, God wants them to accomplish. You're taking away their raison d'etre, their whole reason for existence. You're removing from them. And that the Torah doesn't believe in. All the other reasons make sense. Why you put all the other reasons we said, the four other reasons all make sense. But this idea of stam being a punishment, let's say in the case of the Rambam, this guy who hired a hitman, it was horrible. Lock him up for 20 years. 5 years in, maybe he's a changed man already. But you're still going to keep him there just so others.
It seems like this was a problem.
Unless maybe that's why the Rambam says the whole vort is for others to learn.
Yeah.
When he stays for another 15 years,
seems
taka for him it doesn't make sense.
No.
But something is being gained, which is
So
other people are learning
don't
from him.
say that plenty
Right. In other words, every day he's staying there, he's preventing murders on the street.
Yeah.
This guy, by sitting there doing nothing in the prison cell, is preventing murders on the street.
Well, but you are not imprisoning the one who was the hired hitman, the professional.
He gets killed. He gets killed.
He gets killed.
Yeah.
He did the murder.
I missed
Yeah, he's
that
a murderer.
part.
He can't blame it on the one that sent him. Ein shliach ledvar avera. By an avera, you can't say I'm only his messenger. You should have listened to God.
So
he
all
gets-
these examples are like prison being used as punishment, but how about like prison used as like rehab, rehabilitating someone?
Well, one is a rehab.